Ella, you have papers over there.
Here comes the tiny ones.
All right, I'm getting it right this time. I know it. So the Lucy Sophie question. Alice, you have papers over there.
Is she gonna get it?
I can't.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
I did an alphabetical thing.
What is this
and
tiny
it's
human doing
opposite.
in here? Wow.
Okay.
It's always opposite of what I think.
Oh man, here we go.
LOS. Okay, so I just.
There's little children too.
Oh my
Laura,
God.
you kids.
Oh my.
This is amazing.
What?
We're at the top of the food chain. We're at the top of the food chain.
So what we need everyone else?
That's what, y'all at the bottom. Like,
Oh,
y'all.
stop.
Challenge day is at the bottom.
Ethan, get your stuff right. It's
Cool.
Cool. I'm no longer at the top of the Oh, yeah, Mrs. Ferguson is the top of the food chain.
We thought it was weird that her party was on.
Yeah, that works.
Seventh or something.
Yes,
Maybe they're on top, and then.
Hi everybody. We have a paper that no one wants to claim. It's destined to be recycled and used for my Greek practice on the back. If no one claims it, you might claim it.
That's me.
That's your
Hey!
handwriting.
Okay.
That's definitely your handwriting.
Did everyone have a nice break?
It was relaxing until Monday.
Okay, well, I'm getting mixed signals about whether we had a good break. I'm sorry if you didn't. I'm sorry for, if your family had COVID, if that's unfortunate.
It was.
But are we all ready to work? Are we kind of, oh, Ella's, yes.
I'm ready.
Oh,
I'm ready.
I'm somewhere in between those two. Yes, come in.
Where do we put our questions?
Oh, you know what, if you want to just send them down to the end of the aisle, I will come.
Oh, and everything else.
Isabella is not going to be here today, so I'm going to record the class. So speak up. I don't know if they will be able to do it.
Better be on your.
Anybody else? Sorry. Here, I'll come around. Here, I'm just walking through. I'm just walking through. Today is January 6th, right?
Right.
Okay. Today is the Feast of Epiphany, if you don't already know.
Oh, yeah, I know about that.
This is the, when we observe the wise men coming to Bethlehem to see Jesus. And the significance of that is the incarnation is revealed to the nations, right? Not just the Jews, but the nations come to him. And I thought that was fitting because we're talking about the big nations of that time. We're finishing up our look at Greece, and we're going to start Rome, and we're also going to start the third big important, the most important of all, that made us who we are. This is us. We are Western civilization, right? And even if you ethnically come from another place in the world, if you're American, you're part of Western civilization. And our government, our laws, our art, all of these things and our belief system come from three places. One, we've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks, right? Greece. So, since we've been spending all this time talking about Greece, what are some of the things you think we as a people take from the Greeks? What's something that they honor or enjoy or brought us that we use? Ella's got an idea.
Like words, some of the words we have.
Okay, yes, language, absolutely. Yeah, Alex.
Their democracy and then their philosophy and sciences.
Yes. So certainly language democracy, the concept of democracy, and what was the third one you said?
Philosophy and science.
Philosophy and sciences. This next half of the, oh, I'm sorry, Alice, did you have something else?
I was gonna say, like, this week we read about how we have some plays of history wrote by some of them.
Yes. So,
Art?
art, yes. I was trying to think of how to say art. Yeah, drama, okay, we'll call it history, and not they are history, but historians, right? And drama. For the rest of the school year, we're going to talk about two more civilizations, Rome and Israel. These three places make us who we are. Do you have any conjectures? First of all, let's do the easy one. What do we get from Israel, from the Israelites? Yeah. God, you know, the revelation of God. And that there's one God, not a whole load of them. And Jesus, the incarnation. What are some things, I'm asking you this before we look at Rome closely, but what are some things you think maybe we get from Rome? What do you expect to find out? You have that look. Architecture, you know, that's something else. Okay, the Romans were kind of thieves. They stole a lot of stuff from the Greeks. So a lot of Roman architecture looks a lot like Greek architecture.
You got Latin from
Oh, of course. Yeah. Aren't we glad? No resounding, yay, we got Latin from them. So one thing, I will fill in the blank because it's not fair to ask you before we read about it and talk about it. The Greeks were very idealistic. We love beautiful things. We want everything to be beautiful, right? The Romans were very practical people. We want it to work. We make roads, and some of their roads are still usable 2,000 years later. We make aqueducts because we want to bring water to the people who need water. We make flush toilets. Honestly, I mean, not like ours, but you know, water flowed underneath. It's like an outhouse with water flowing underneath. Not beautiful, but functional, right? And so, if this is like theoretical science, this is practical science, all right? Things that we can use. They excelled at that. Do you know they invented the use of concrete? I had something else. Oh, Rome was a republic for many years. We are a republic, right? In Greece, they could have pure democracy. You have 6,000 people in Athens, 6,000 men who are eligible to vote. They can all get together and everybody can cast a vote. If we all got together and voted on every single thing, like whether to pave a road or, we would never get anything done. So we have representatives to vote for us. We got that from Rome. So that's what we're going to spend the rest of the year on. I'm going to go back to that in a little bit, but let's look at the questions that you did to finish off our study of Greece. The first question I asked you is, what do we mean by the Hellenistic age? What in the world does that mean? Yeah, Alex.
The era in time when the Greeks pretty much reigned.
The Greeks reigned. It was a small time. Rome had a big time, Greece had a small time. What in the world happened to make Greece? Greece is not a big country. I didn't bring my maps today. Greece is a tiny country. How in the world did they end up ruling half the known world?
Because known world is small.
Well, that helps if the known world is small, but it was still a pretty big area. Somebody did something.
It was Alexander.
Alexander the Great. Remember that? I know. We're all in a fog of Christmas cookies and Turkey. I am too. Alexander the Great conquered, picture my map, all the way from Greece to India. But, unfortunately, he pulled that stunt, kind of like the goddess of discord in the apple to the fairest. He's just like, to the strongest. I'm dying. Good luck. Fight over my empire, which they did. And it's an ugly, long, drawn-out thing. But one thing did last. He took Greek sculpture and art and language all across the places that he went, and went around naming places Alexandria. Right? One important one we'll talk about. And so that is why a very important series of documents for us is written in Greek. I've mentioned this before. What collection of books that is very, very, very important were written in Greek?
The Bible.
Bible, the New Testament. Because everybody spoke Greek. All educated people spoke Greek. The Apostle Paul spoke Greek, and he wrote Greek to all those people living in Asia Minor, West Turkey. All right? So the next thing we read, I asked you about this series of people, and I asked you, what are they known for doing? Let me go to that section. I need to use bookmarks, don't I? Oh, we did that. Okay, here we go. The first guy was Herodotus. We've met him over and over. Anybody remember Herodotus's claim to fame? Christmas. You did this like a month ago, didn't you?
I need my paper.
That's okay. I know, I took your papers. Does the merry-go-round of death ring a bell?
No.
He's a historian. He's the guy, among other stories, the merry-go-round, who wrote a history of the Persian War. But here's the thing, because I love to read history. Well, obviously, I love to read history books. And it's amazing that no one before Herodotus had thought, hey, you know, I could go around and talk to people and interview them and write the complete story of this happening. What a novel idea. I'm so glad he did. Maybe in high school you guys can read Herodotus. He talks a lot. He's very wordy. But he's the father of history. And he traveled around when travel wasn't really easy. He went to Egypt. He went to those crazy Scythians who had the merry-go-round of death, and collected information and put it all into a history for us. Well, let me ask you about the next one, Thucydides. I'm just going to tell you these because you're not going to remember, are you? It's okay. You will meet these guys later. This is an introduction to them. It's kind of like, hello, shaking hands. And then later, when you're older, you will meet them again, and you will say, I remember you. I met you once. Thucydides is the guy who was a general in the Peloponnesian War, and he didn't do a good job, according to his superiors. And you know what Athenians do to people who don't do a good job?
Oh yeah, they exile.
They just exile them, or they just fire them. And so they fired him, basically, and he said, okay, I guess I have lots of free time on my hands. I will write a history of the Peloponnesian War.
Oh yeah, and he died in that.
And he died before he could get it finished. He actually lived through that plague in Athens. So we know what the plague was like, because it didn't kill him. And yeah, so we have this very methodical, and they're very different. Herodotus tells wild stories that, unfortunately, a lot of people think, oh, that can't possibly be true. And I think, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. He made a comment, Dorothy Mills quoted him. He said, I am bound to report all that is said, but I am not bound to believe it. I'll tell you what they said, but I don't know if it's true. But he saw God, the gods driving everything. The gods are fighting for Greece against Persia. Thucydides was more, I don't know, I guess religiously skeptical. He's like, no, it's people. People screwed up. People made good decisions or bad decisions. So they're different. Okay, Plutarch, he was our biographer. I'm going to skip through some of these. I'm actually going to go down to Archimedes, because he's the interesting one. Oh, yeah.
let's see, Archimedes. I forgot.
Does anybody know anything about Archimedes? Like, you know the name, I bet. Like, Archimedes, who is he?
Didn't he like create the pulley or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an inventor.
Yeah.
He also created like the water thing. I can't remember what it's called.
He created, like, to pump, he pumped the water out of the boat.
The cork.
Are you thinking of the bathtub episode? No, okay.
Oh, no.
Oh, there's so,
The water cork.
there's so many things. Say that again?
The water cork, where if it spins, the water goes up and around.
Okay, the screw?
Yeah.
Yes. Archimedes was Greek. He lived in Sicily. Remember, Sicily is the island that the boot of Italy is kicking? You can remember it that way. And he lived later than the other guys. He lived, about 200 BC. Yeah, Alex.
And during a Roman invasion, he actually ended up creating all of these weapons for Sicily to use, and they were pretty crazy.
First of all, the story in the Dorothy Mills book is the one about that the king of Syracuse built this boat, and it has a dance floor,
Like
and
Titanic.
it was like the Titanic, and then they couldn't get it into the water, which I feel like maybe if you're going to build a big boat, build it close. But he invented the system of pulleys that he drug it down. He's the guy who famously said, "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I will move the world." You know, because it's much easier to move things with levers. You're doing physical science. You're doing the physical science book, okay, and you'll learn about levers and forces. But yeah, during the war, the Romans were attacking Sicily. We'll talk about the reasons why later. And he invented all of these mechanisms for defense for the king, including, my son likes to call it, over Christmas I said, we were talking about Archimedes, he said, "Are you going to tell him about the laser beam thing?" I'm like, not laser beams exactly, but a system of mirrors and sunlight, and he could set the boats on fire out in the harbor. Awesome. The famous story about Archimedes is that the king was commissioned a crown to be made, and he gave the artisan a certain amount of gold and silver, and he asked him to make this crown. And for whatever reason, when the king got it back, he suspected that the artisan had kept some of the precious metals for himself and substituted like lead or something less valuable. And he wanted Archimedes to find out without melting it down. And so Archimedes is like, "How can I do this?" And he's sitting in the bathtub, and he sees the water, right? You know when you sit down in the tub, like the water goes up and then you get up and the water goes down? Because your mass displaces water. And he realized that the amount of water being displaced is equal to my mass, and if I know the mass of the precious metals in the crown and I submerge it in water and I measure how much water is displaced, I'll know what the metals are in the crown. And they say he got so excited that he jumped out of the bathtub and ran out into the street naked, yelling, "Eureka," which means "I have found it." Don't do that. if you make an exciting discovery, maybe put your robe on first before you announce it to the world. But yes, so Alex was saying that he defended Sicily, but unfortunately, a Roman soldier came in and he was so absorbed in something that he was drawing on the ground, and he said to the Roman soldier, "Step away from my diagram. Archimedes, your city is being attacked. Step away from my diagram." And the soldier killed him. Yeah. And I am thinking, I don't know this, but I'm thinking the soldier got in big trouble later. Or none of the soldiers wanted to say, "Yeah, I'm the one who killed Archimedes, the guy who would have been a great asset to us." Because think of all the awesome things he might have done if he had been rude to the Roman soldier. It's unfortunate. Okay, so the sum of all this is we have a tremendous heritage from the Greeks. One more place we're going to visit. I asked you guys, why was the city of Alexandria, the one in Egypt, so important to the ancient world? what was in Alexandria?
The museum.
The museum, and what did they do at this museum?
It was a place to learn, and wasn't it like an academy of sorts?
It's like you going to college, going to university. And in this place, they had a collection of something, the largest in the world. Scrolls, books. The Library of Alexandria was the prime place to go study because they worked to collect manuscripts from all over the world, including the famous story of the Greek Old Testament. Do you guys know? I'm doing it again. How do I always lose my pen? I feel like one of you sneaks up here and moves it, but I know it's me. I know it's me. I'm erasing this. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to call it the Septuagint or the Septuagint, to tell you the truth. I always say Septuagint. Does anybody, gent? We're going to take a vote?
I've always heard gent.
Gent, okay, we're going to go with that. It means 70. Like you see the sept there, Septuagint. The story goes that the ruler of Alexandria at the time, when he was collecting books for the library, wanted to include every important book, and so he contacted some Jewish scholars in Judea, and he said, we should have a copy of your sacred writings in Greek for the world, because not very many people could read Hebrew. And so they sent 70, sometimes I hear it's 72, 70, and we're going to go with 70 scholars to Alexandria. The story goes that they put each one of them in a separate room, and they each independently worked to take the Hebrew copy of the Old Testament and turn it into Greek. And when they came back together, they all matched perfectly. And you might say, but think about that. Translating one language to another, they all chose the same words. Because you know, we have words that, numerous words that could mean the same thing. That is the story. And so they considered it God's guidance, that they all together produced this Greek Old Testament. So sometimes in your Bibles you will see, if you have a study Bible that has footnotes or something, it will say, you know, it says this in the Septuagint. That's what they're referring to. It was the Old Testament that was translated in Alexandria. And it was the one that the early church used before there was a Latin Bible translated by church. Okay. Any other comments, questions, observations about the Greeks and Greece before we move on? No. In 146 BC, Corinth got conquered by Rome, and there was no more. I can't say there was no more Greek culture. I already told you that the Romans stole stuff, but the Greeks were no longer a power in the world. But the stuff they gave us, the heritage, lives on. So I would like you guys to pull out your Socrates book, all right? Now I know you probably read this so long ago now. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm gonna look for this again if I don't put it right here. So after you finish the book, is the consensus that we enjoyed the book?
It was a good book.
We liked the book. Okay. So for those who are visiting, we read this book where Socrates comes back to life, and he goes to modern Athens, and he goes to an abortion clinic, and he reasons with the people at the abortion clinic about whether or not abortion is good. Abortion is murder, right? So in the first dialogue, he meets a guy named Rex Herod, King Herod, who killed the babies in Bethlehem, ordered them to be killed after the birth of Jesus. Yet this book is full of terrible puns and groaners. And so he had a discussion with Rex Herod, and that was the thrust of that first dialogue, right? What is the definition? Let's use reason to find out what abortion is. And they decided murder was the killing of an innocent human being. Does everybody remember that? Mm-hmm. Right. And they had to agree that it was killing, because something was alive and then it wasn't alive anymore. And they had to agree that it was innocent because there wasn't any chance for an unborn baby to do anything wrong. But it was the human being part that they just couldn't come to terms with. And so Socrates, very slyly from Herod's point of view, and reasonably from maybe our point of view, points out to him the reasons why an unborn baby is still a human being. It can't be a part of the mother, or the mother would have, remember, four feet, and 4 eyes, and 2 noses, and it just became ridiculous. And then they looked at, well, when does it become a human being? When it's not dependent on the mother, but infants are dependent on their mothers. Old people are dependent on other people. We call them human beings. So that was the first dialogue. Does anybody remember what the thrust of the second dialogue? This is when he talked to Dr. Terrian, to give you a hint. Attila Terrian. I'm going to write the big word on the board. Utilitarian. Do you remember that? His name was a joke on utilitarian. It's thinking about what's useful. Basing what's good on what's useful. If it works, it's good. If it doesn't work, it's bad. And Utilitarian was trying to convince Socrates that, well, people are going to get abortions anyway. We might as well make it legal. Just practicality, right? And Socrates frustrated him, like Socrates frustrates everyone when they talk to him. The third dialogue was with a guy named Pop. His nickname is Pop, psych. And I told you before we left in December, his name is a joke, popular psychology, all right? Pop psych. Oh, the puns just never end. He wants to explore your feelings, right? But how do you feel about it? Maybe if you feel good about it, it's right. Maybe if you feel bad about it, it's wrong. Can you see a problem with that just right off the bat? If I feel good about it, it's right. If I feel bad about it, it's wrong. What's the problem?
A lot of things you feel like good about is sin. So
Yeah.
Feel good
Because-
about pizza, but I hate broccoli.
Yeah, but you should eat the broccoli, but you can eat pizza, but in moderation, you know? So we're not always drawn to feel good about the things that are good. Here's the other thing. Maybe you don't like broccoli and I do. So it's good for me, it's not good for you. So good starts depending on who we are. Well, that seems kind of dangerous. What if I think it's good to take your stuff?
What do you think is good to shove off a bridge?
Yes.
it's just not.
Yes,
Wow.
tell me what you say.
With dark.
I think popular psychology, that's so shaky, like, such doesn't have really a foundation because it changes.
It changes.
So much.
It
It's not
changes.
reliable.
And if we're going to pattern our lives on what's good or what's bad, what God wants of us, what is virtuous and what is not virtuous, it can't be changing all the time. What if I wanted to drive to Peoria, but they kept changing the signs and they kept moving Peoria? You see, I mean, that's kind of what it would be like. It would be crazy world. And so Socrates meets up with Pop Psych. So how many of you haven't read this in the last 3 weeks? You have not read any of it in the last 3 weeks. Okay.
Yeah, you have. Me and you did one.
Oh, wait a minute. I
like
knew
2 weeks.
that they.
Yeah.
It's okay, it's okay.
What?
But I just wondered if it's been, if it's really, really a distant memory for you, because sometimes you read something and then you have holiday things happening and then it's hard to get your brain. Maybe I should just speak for myself. It's hard for me to get my brain back to where I was before. If you have your book with you, please get it out. And let's do some of the readings again, because that was entertaining. It was entertaining for me anyway. Just a second, Kyle. Before Socrates even comes in the room, if you remember, they're already saying, oh, do I really have to talk to this guy? What is wrong with this guy? And he comes in and he says, you're treating me like I'm a disease. Like reason is a disease. So if you turn to page 131. So who has not, is there anyone who has not had a turn reading and wants to read?
You said read next time.
I said you could read next time. Is there anyone who just hasn't had any turn and wants to read? You? No? Oh, you read it, okay. So Kyle's gonna get to read first. And, okay, is there someone who wants to read but didn't get to read in the second dialogue? You know what I mean? I did the first one but didn't get to read the second one. You want to? Okay. So who wants to be Socrates and who wants to be Psyche?
Socrates.
I'm not doing it. So why are you looking at me?
Do you want to do it?
I'll
Yes.
do the next one without.
Okay, okay.
So we're starting this page.
Okay, I would like, which one, you're Socrates?
Yes.
Okay, I would like you to go down, or no, let's start up towards the top. Okay, do you see where Socrates says it is no game, Pop?
But wait, where?
Okay, just like, do you see that? Okay, start there.
It is no game, Pop, but
Inquiry.
into how we should live. Can you think more serious business than that?
Anything you say, Socrates.
No. It's not I who says we must inquire about someone's common master.
Yes, I'm quite familiar with your personification of your own thinking process. Please don't be insulted. But friends are honest with each other, and I feel this is unworthy of you, my friend. I should think you would have stopped talking to an imaginary friend when you stopped being a child.
The common master is no more mine than light of the sun, and no more imaginary if you do not accept his light. We cannot walk together, you and I, but only grope apart and feel around in each other's darkness. It is what your work consists of.
Oh, Socrates, let's at least be friends. Let's be together, whether in the light or in the darkness.
But do not friends share all things in common? Yet you will not share the light in which I live.
You mean the light of reason?
Yes. Will you explore the common light with me for a while then? If you insist, we can try to explore the individual darkness that you call subconscious.
All right, that's only fair. Now, where were we?
I was referring to your argument that I must have a great load of guilt because I judge about guilt absorption.
Oh yes, well, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings.
You didn't hurt my feelings. You hurt your own thinking.
What do you mean?
You contradicted yourself.
How?
Judging me for being judgmental is being judgmental yourself. It is not. Either it is right to judge or is it not so? Or not. If so, it is right for me to judge. If not, it is wrong for you to judge me. The worst, in fact, for only judge the act by judging the person.
Okay, I'm going to have you stop there. So the problem is, in this pop psychology that the idea is, oh, Socrates, you must feel guilty about a lot of things. You must have a burden of guilt, so you blame other people. You base your right and wrong on how you feel, right? And Socrates is trying to tear that argument down. Yes, Ella, did you have a comment?
So who's the common master?
Who is the common master that they follow, that they need to follow? Reason. Reason is the common master. Socrates says we have to follow the argument. And notice how Herod and utilitarian and pop psych always want to side, but I don't like that. Right? I don't like that result of your reasoning process. And Socrates said, well, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. What does Socrates always want to do?
If a person say that, I don't know.
Okay, yes, get a person to admit that they don't know. What else does he always want to do? What is he looking for? The truth. You know how, have you ever been in an argument with someone and, let's face it, and you just wanted to be right? Let's just be honest. Yeah, I just want to be right. That's different than just wanting to know the truth. Sometimes we're wrong, and the truth hurts, right? And so these people that he's encountering, the truth hurts because they're making their living, or they're in Pop Psych's case, philosophically supporting the idea of abortion. And they don't want to know the truth. Socrates is like, we have to follow the common master. If this is the road that leads to the truth, we have to keep going down it. Who else would like to read a section? Okay, you two? Discuss among yourselves, Socrates or Pop? And we're going to go to page 135. One problem that, in addition to, if people felt good about themselves, people would be kinder. That's what Pop Psych is. So it's all about how we feel about ourselves, not about what's right and wrong, but how we feel about ourselves. The other thing he likes to talk about is compassion, right? We need to have compassion for the mothers who may not want to have a child. So this is where we're going to pick up on page 135. So whoever Psych is, go down towards the bottom where Psych says, I think I do. And start there.
I don't know, I guess. Okay.
I think I do. Your argument dealt almost entirely with the fetus. I think it's time for women.
Let us consider the mothers, by all means. What word do you want to put in for them?
That they have rights.
I agree. Now let us see where we disagree. Why do you say they have rights? Is it because they are people?
I guess so.
Let's see whether we can take it beyond a guess to knowing. Do stones have rights?
No.
Do plants?
No. People do.
Simply because they are people?
Yes.
So if a fetus is a person, it too has rights. As it is written in the great classic of your literature, Horton hears a who. A person's a person, no matter how small.
But a fetus is not a person.
So we are back to our original argument again. Just as we kept being led back to it yesterday. Have you anything to say about that?
No. I want to talk about women's rights.
All right. What do you mean by women's rights?
Well, I believe a woman should have reproductive freedom. The right not to bear a child if she doesn't want to. The right to do as she pleases with her own body. The right not to be a slave of nature, a baby-making machine. The right to dignity, the dignity of women, people, not machines.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. So, what about the mother? The mother has rights. What is Socrates' answer to that? Why does the mother have rights?
Because they're people.
Because she's a person. So, persons have rights. Stones don't have rights. Persons have rights. So, what's the big question? Return to.
Is the fetus
Is the fetus a person? it keeps going back to that, right? That keeps being the bone of contention, the point where they can't come to an agreement. For time's sake, because I have other things I want to do today, we're going to do just short readings. Ethan, you wanted to read. Does someone else who hasn't read yet today want to read a short, EJ? Talk about, come to an agreement between yourselves.
Are you sure? I'll be sorry.
Okay, start on page 140, about 2/3 of the way down. Socrates says, this thing you keep speaking of. Start there.
This thing you keep speaking of, compassion, is it a virtue?
Of course.
Then I would be grateful to you for helping me to acquire it, for I think there is nothing nobler or more necessary than a complete stock of virtues.
Well, now, perhaps we're getting somewhere. I think I may be able to help you there, Socrates.
Then would you help me take the first step towards the acquiring of this precious thing?
What's that?
Why, telling me what it is, of course, so that when I find it, I may recognize it and clasp it to myself, and not let it go, because I confuse it with some other, less precious thing.
You mean you want a definition of compassion?
How else am I to recognize it?
Must you always be so theoretical?
I am being more practical. It is for the sake of actually gaining a virtue that I seek, to know what a virtue is, so that I can avoid the very practical danger of confusing it with what it isn't, and resting content with a mistake. So would you now help me by defining this precious virtue which you say I lack?
I don't know, Socrates. I think you just have to feel it. How can you define the feeling?
You have just taken the first step. You gave its genus. Compassion is a feeling. Now all we need is the second half of the definition, the specific difference between this feeling and all other feelings, and we have done what we set out to do. I am surprised, though, that you think of compassion as a virtue if it is a feeling.
Why?
We are praised or blaming for having or lacking a virtue, are we not?
Yes.
And when we are praised or blamed for something, that implies that we are responsible for that thing, does it not?
Yes.
Are we responsible for what is under our control or for what is not?
What is under our control?
Are our deliberate choices under our control?
Yes.
Are our feelings under our control?
What do you mean?
Can we by a rational choice turn on or turn off a feeling at will?
Of course not. Though a
Rationalistic.
rationalistic fool may try.
Then it follows that compassion is not a virtue.
What?
Shall we go through the steps of the argument?
Okay, let's stop there. So, what does it say? Why are feelings not virtues?
Because they can't, it just comes automatically. Virtues are something that you have to work for.
Okay, yeah, and feelings just come to us. Yeah, Ella.
Virtues can be gained, and feelings are built into us.
Remember when we talked about love, when we started our about oral and psyche, love, and God tells us to love. But does that mean we will always have rosy, warm feelings about other people? No. In fact, we're commanded to love the people that we might, legitimately have the least rosy feelings towards, our enemies, right? So it has to mean something other than feel warm, rosy feelings. So here they're talking about compassion. Oh, I feel so sorry for you. That's too bad. I want to have compassion for you. I'm not doing anything to help you. I just feel compassionate. And in the case of abortion, obviously, the compassion leads to, well, I will relieve you of your burden, instead of helping you bear your burden, right? We're going to stop there. It's been a while since you read it, and also I have some other things I want to cover today. He has other books where Socrates meets people. So if you really enjoyed this book and you want to find them, see if they're at the library. There's Socrates meets Descartes, the philosopher. One great one is called The Best Things in Life, where he goes to a college campus and talks to students about what they should major in, what do they want to get out of life. And a really cool one is Socrates meets Jesus. And it's not the historical, literal Jesus. He goes to a Bible study. and he encounters the gospel for the first time, which is very interesting. So if we had just all the time in the world to read every book, and I could make you stay up all night reading, cancel all your other work, then we would read all those. But maybe you could choose one of those. Peter Kraft, he's really a great author to follow up on. For our next 7 weeks, I am going to be asking you guys to read a little bit more than the average that we've been reading. But do not fear. I don't think it's going to be that bad. Besides, the Dorothy Mills book, it has pictures, right? It's not really, if you have 30 pages of the Dorothy Mills book, 5 of those are probably going to be space on the page or some sort of picture, so it's not as bad. But I'm going to ask you to ramp up the reading a little bit, but I'm going to give you some, let's do some more fun writing assignments, kind of take the load off there. Yes, Kyle?
So for the new book, how much do we have to read, or is it?
I will tell you
Okay.
at the end of class. Do not let me send you away without telling you.
Do we have to finish in 7 weeks?
We are going to finish it in 7 weeks.
Or
so,
do we have to finish in 5 weeks to write the paper?
no, don't worry. You will be informed. Don't worry. Our next book is called The Young Folks Josephus. And I know, and Hannah's like,
I know,
Huge.
I can't read what the name says.
Josephus.
okay, Josephus.
Okay.
I'm going to introduce you to him today. We've been reading out of our history book for the first semester and another piece of literature. For a few weeks here, we're going to read sort of 2 historical documents at the same time because we've got Rome and Israel that I want to look at. So Josephus, I'm going to read, because this author does it better than I can, a little bit about who this guy is. Flavius Josephus was born in Jerusalem in AD 37. So, a few years after the crucifixion. That's when he was born. He was of illustrious birth, his father being a priest, which was considered a great distinction among the Jews, and his mother a member of the royal family of the Asmoneans. He received an excellent education and profited so well by what he had learned that at the age of 16 he was frequently consulted by the chief priests when they could not agree on difficult questions. About this time he joined the sect of the Essenes and went to live in the desert with a celebrated hermit named Banu. Have you guys ever heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Do you know? They found these documents in a cave. A shepherd boy or a goat herd found them. These people were the Essenes. They were sort of desert hermits that were looking for the coming of the Messiah, and as opposed to the people who were violently wanting to eject the Romans from Israel, they were more peaceful. We're just going to look for the world to come. We're going to look for peace with God. So he joined those for a while. After 3 years, he returned to Jerusalem, where he abandoned the Essenes and became a Pharisee. In the year 63, he visited Rome to procure the liberation of some Jewish prisoners that had been sent there by the governor Felix, who we meet in the book of Acts, and was favorably received. Okay, I'm skipping down. When the Jews revolted against Rome, he was appointed governor of Galilee, and the story of his brave defense at Jotapata and of its final capture and of his escape from death, alone among the Jewish warriors, through the intercession of Titus, has been told by himself in the Jewish War, which is in this book. You're going to read about it. He became a freedom fighter and a rebel against the Romans. They holed up in a cave, and he was the only one who came out alive, earning him some disgust from his fellow Jews because they felt like he was collaborating with the Romans. At the destruction of Jerusalem, his influence with the Emperor Vespasian procured the liberation of his brothers and 50 of his friends. It was out of gratitude for these and other favors that Josephus about this time assumed the emperor's family name, Flavius. And his Jewish war was finished in 75. Half of this book, the second half of his is his eyewitness story of the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Remember when Jesus was walking in Jerusalem and the disciples were saying, "Oh, Master, look at the beautiful buildings." And he said, I tell you the truth, not one stone is going to be left on another. It's all coming down. I'm paraphrasing that last part. And 40 years later it did. The Romans completely obliterated the temple. It's gone. There's no temple there. Does anybody know what is there? Where the temple in Jerusalem used to be?
Either a mosque or
A mosque. The Dome of the Rock is on that mount. Yes.
What is the book called?
It's called Our Young Folks Josephus.
How do you spell that?
Well, Our Young Folks. You know that.
Yeah.
And it's on the list of books. Your parents have it. Josephus.
Alright, thanks.
Right? The first half of this book is the second big work that he did. It was called the Antiquities of the Jews. He was friendly with the Romans at this point, but the Romans didn't know very much about the Jews. They were just this weird group of people over there that wouldn't worship other gods. What's up with them? And they had special permission from the Romans not to worship the Roman gods, not to worship the emperor. They were the only ones with special permission. But the Romans thought they were kind of kooks. Didn't know much about him. And so Josephus decided to write a book telling the history of his people to the Romans so they would understand. So basically, this is going to be a recap of the Old Testament. He starts with Abraham. Why would he start with Abraham?
Abraham was the beginning of Israel.
Yes, the father of the Hebrews. And so many of these stories are going to be very, very familiar to you. But when I got this book and I saw how big it was, I thought, oh, maybe we should just read the second half. And then I thought, I don't feel like reviewing the plot of the Old Testament will do any of us any harm. Sometimes, and maybe this isn't true for you, when I was growing up in Sunday school, often we would learn stories in isolation. Like we'd learn about Daniel, or we'd learn about Moses. But it took a long time for me to put them all together. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? In a plot, and I couldn't figure out why are they over here? How did they get to Babylon? What happened? And so this will be a good chance for us to read the plot of it. And so you will also encounter some things that aren't in the Old Testament, because he's not rehashing the Old Testament. He's using all the sources of their history to tell you the story of his people. Also, the time period of the Maccabean revolt and the beginning of Hanukkah, those things will be included in here. All right. So we are going to, in answer to Kyle's question, let me find my little. I would like you guys to read for next week chapters 1 through 20.
Oh, wow.
But some of the chapters are only one page. I know. Just
one page.
everybody, just take a deep breath in.
Wow.
Deep breath out. Let me make sure. Here's what I suggest. I'm looking in the table of contents. Just a second to tell you how many pages this is. Okay. That's 60 pages.
Oh, wow. That's not even that. Wow.
See, so now do you feel better?
Wow.
And it's stories that you know. But here's what you should do when you're faced with a big writing assignment and you want to divide it up. You have class today, so you're probably not doing a lot of homework today, right? So say you're, I was going to say lazy, that's not. You just don't want to do any work on the weekend. Your family is busy and you're being together on the weekend. So we have 4 days, right? You have 4 days and 60 pages.
50 pages a day.
15.
Just read 15 pages a day. Or you could take the number of chapters, and you could say, I'm going to read 5 chapters a day. But that wouldn't be equal, because some of the chapters are longer than others. Don't wait till Friday. Or, no, this is Wednesday. I was thinking it was Monday. It still is Christmas cookies. Just My brain, yes.
Don't wait till
My
Monday.
husband said my brain was sugar-coated. I don't think that's a compliment. I'm trying to detox very, very slowly. So don't wait till Monday or Tuesday of next week and pick up your book, okay? Yeah,
Okay.
Pace yourself.
Try.
I know, you're looking at me like, duh, but some of you will still wait. I know you will. And so we're going to start going back. You know, we've added some things to our timelines. We're going to go back on our timelines and add Roman history and Israel's history. And it will be interesting for us to see some of the things that are happening at the same time. You know, we read about Greece and we think what's happening there, but we don't think about what's happening in the rest of the world. Do any of you have a book with one of those multiple timeline books that has Asia and America and Europe and they have, yeah, they're cool. You should get one of those. Yeah. Hannah.
What are we supposed to read in the Roman?
The Roman, yes. So everybody, I didn't bring my book. So there is a companion book. We have the Book of the Ancient Greeks. It's red, and it's the Book of the Ancient Romans. Thank you. And I want you to read, so everybody can see, looks like this. And by the way, you probably noticed we did not read every single page of the Dorothy Mills book because we don't have time. And we're not going to read every single page of this book. I would like to, but it would be a grievous burden on you guys, I think. So I have edited the parts that we want to read. So out of the New Mills book, please read chapters 1 through 3.
Correct, everyone has the same book?
May I borrow your book again?
Does everyone have the same book?
I don't know. So I'm going to give
I
you the
do.
page numbers. It starts on page 13. I think it's 13 through 20. Yeah, 13 through 25.
Wow.
Pages
That's
13 through 25.
that's very short.
Yeah.
Nice.
And we're going to look at the founding of Rome. All right, are we good? Last thing to look at is our writing. Does anybody have writing for me that they haven't turned in? I gathered some stuff earlier. Here, I see. I think I got yours. Oh, first of all, before I forget, let me pass out your new questions. Oh, and if I hadn't uncovered the questions, you know what I wouldn't have gotten out?
Uh-oh.
It's
yeah.
my last week for it.
Wow.
Here, would you guys do me the favor of just taking half and then take a couple and then just pass them backwards? And while you do that, I will entertain you with.
Yikes.
But never fear, I have an Egypt and a Rome one too, so.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's not going away. Okay. What?
You stole his sister. How dare you? How dare you?
All right, I'm using my mind. I'm looking in table of contents. Why am I not?
There's two people down around here.
Oh, here. Oh, okay, thank you. Our poem of the day is Archimedes.
Wait, what's this one about?
I wonder.
Oh.
Here we go. Bright Archimedes, brilliant Greek scientist, sat and relaxed in his bath. He studied the water, and what he discovered set scientists on a new path. He saw that an object, when placed in the water, always displaced its own weight. He shouted, "Eureka," which means I have found it, then dried off and felt really great. Oh, okay, encore. Herodotus, the father of history. Okay, this is the last one I promise. The father of history, that's what he's called. Important events he described and recalled. He wrote about Persia, he wrote about Greece, he wrote about wars, he wrote about peace. Herodotus told us a lot that we know about things that happened a long time ago.
Again, no one?
All right.
We're good.
Next week we will premiere the Roman poems.
Ooh. Wow.
Okay, writing.
Yes, writing.
Who in here prefers to write non-fiction papers? Like that's your favorite thing to write?
Mm-mm.
Essays. Okay. Oh, don't see a lot of hands.
Wait, nonfiction?
Nonfiction. You
As-
like to write essays and
Oh, essays.
book
Oh,
that's
okay.
okay.
That's.
All right. As opposed to creative writing fiction. Oh.
I love
Oh, I'm getting.
You're so good.
Oh, you like creative writing fiction? You say good. Okay. Well,
Then you can say it, and then everyone.
those of you who raised your hand second are going to be happy for the next few weeks because I feel like you guys have chugged and churned out essays for me. And it's time to use your imagination a little bit. Oh, but not too much. Don't worry. Do you remember, so who in here has done the Institute for Excellence in Writing, went through the IEW? Do you remember the 3-paragraph story summaries? You know, where it's like character setting, and then what do they want, what do they need, and then how does it get resolved? Okay, we're not doing that. Okay, so calm down.
You scared me.
But we're doing something similar. Kyle, did you have a comment?
So are we gonna have like a big story like about
Just
the Old
wait.
Testament? And
Don't
we have to
ask. Just wait. Just wait. You will find out. Yes, Alex. Oh, you were just, okay. I saw a hand and I just. Do you remember I told you that Aesop was Greek? Aesop was, as far as we know, a Greek slave. So that makes him handy to use for anything we want because he's Greek and we're studying Greece. When you read a story, how many of you read fiction more than nonfiction? Oh, that's a double-handed yes. Fiction, okay? Some people it's kind of balanced. Some people really like to read fiction. When you read a story, and it's a really engaging story, one thing that good authors do is they show you things. They don't just tell you. Let me give you an example. I could say, Kyle came into the room, he was very angry. You're not angry. I don't think you're angry. You don't seem angry to me. And I told you he was angry. But I could say, Kyle strode into the room, he stormed into the room, slammed the door behind him, and stomped across the floor. Okay, I didn't tell you he was angry, but you can see he's angry, right? And it's always better when you can weave those details in and not just say, once there was a girl, her name was Julie, she had blonde hair, and she liked butterflies. Maybe you could say that Julie was out in the meadow and her blonde hair blew back as she chased the butterflies, you know, and then I know, oh, she has blonde hair and she likes butterflies, instead of just telling. Right? It takes some practice to do that. It's not natural because, you know, little kids, when they start writing a story, it's very tell you, right? If you've read a story written by a young child, there was a person, he was this, he did this, instead of weaving it into the story. So, I'm not going to make you make up your own story out of, yes. You know what, I would do the same thing. I am not a good story maker. When my kids were little and they'd say, tell me a story, I'm like, no. Make up one of your own. No, you don't want me to do that. They were terrible. So I would breathe a sigh of relief too. But we are going to take a very familiar story, the ant and the grasshopper. Okay, if you do not know the story of the ant and the grasshopper, I have given it to you, but you do. You remember the ant works all summer and he's so diligent, and the grasshopper just dances around and he plays because he's a lazy bum and he doesn't think about anything in the future. I'm sorry, but he is. And then, oh, it's winter and he's, oh, Mr. Ant, can I have food? And in some nice versions, it's like, okay, I guess you've learned your lesson that you should plan ahead. And then in some versions, it's like, no, you can't. And the grasshopper goes off and dies. Depending on the age of the child you're addressing. All right. So what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of retell this story with a twist. And I'm going to show you, give you an example of exactly what I mean.
Twist.
When you tell a story, your reader needs to know some things, right? And they need to know what I call the 5 W's. You all know the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, and why.
Don't forget how.
How will be woven in. No, we've injected how because it has the wrong consonant beginning. Here's what I did for my example. I'm going to hand out this example to you, okay? I took the story of the tortoise and the hare. I'm actually going to, see, the minute I start handing it out, you're going to start reading it and then, what? Okay, but Isabella's not here, so I'm going to keep hers. And then do the same thing. Okay. So I took the story of the tortoise and the hare, which we all know. We all know what I'm talking about when I say the tortoise and the hare? Jacob?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It wouldn't take me long to tell it, but I'm assuming we all know. Okay? Here's what I did. I want to tell the story. Hey, are we with me?
Nope.
Oh. Are there extras somewhere?
They're all stapled together, right?
There's just two. You should have two stapled together.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a whole pile right here.
Ethan!
Ethan is the weak link in this chain.
Oops.
Okay, no, it's fine. I wanted to see if I could tell the story from the point of view of a character, and instead of telling these things, there was a hare, he was in a race, I wanted to see if I could weave the details in, if I could show and not tell. So, you can look at it now, all right? Look at the top of the paper I just gave you. It says, who? Just look at the left column first. Who? There's a tortoise. We're just going from the point of view of the tortoise first. What? What's happening? I decided he's waking up excited. When is this? It's an early spring morning. Why? Because I wanted it to be. I made this up. It could be any time. Where is he? He's on top of a rock, I decided. Why is he there? Because he was too slow to get inside the night before, because he's slow, right? Which makes the whole race thing very funny. That's my who, what, when, where, why. I made this up. I just decided I'm going to pick the morning of the race. I'm just imagining Mr. Tortoise. Where is he? How is he feeling? What is he doing? And here's the paragraph I wrote. I wanted to make sure I included all 5 W's. Now, I put dress-ups in this. You don't have to do dress-ups. And some of you, if you don't even know what dress-ups are, don't worry about it. I just happened, when I wrote this, I was doing dress-ups. So don't worry about it. On a pleasantly warm spring morning, Tommy Tortoise awoke, stretched, and began clambering down from the rock on which he had fallen asleep the previous night. Feeling a sense of excitement building within him, he remembered with a start. Today was the day. He would show his skeptical woodland friends what determination could accomplish. As he slid gently off the rock where he had fallen asleep when darkness overtook him, he began to mentally prepare for the task that lay before him. Finally, he would give that upstart Harvey Hare a reason to respect him. Right. The details, I just filled in with my imagination. I didn't have to make up the story. The story was given to me, but the details, hey, he could be named anything, he could look like anything. I didn't really describe his appearance at all, but I did put in who he is, what's happening, when it's happening, where he is, and why he was there. Without just saying, he was here because he fell asleep on the rock. Now, I decided to do the same thing for the hare. Same morning. And I did the same thing. I made a who, what, when, where, why list. And I made up things for the hare. He is the hare. He's waking up tired. When is this? Same early spring morning. Where is he? He's on the floor of his burrow. Why? Because he's exhausted from spring cleaning. See, he's tired, and he's going to take a nap during the race. Okay. So here's my paragraph for Harvey Hare. Harvey Hare opened one eye and peered around the burrow, which he had called home for the past 2 years. After a full day of furious spring cleaning, he had fallen asleep in exhaustion on the now spotlessly clean floor. When spring hit the meadow, Harvey always felt increased energy and excitement. Combining that pent-up energy with an utter distaste for clutter, he had embarked the previous morning on a cleaning spree lasting far into the night. It was long but rewarding. Tiredly lifting himself from the floor, he opened his eyes wide as he remembered the appointment he had scheduled a week ago. Only 2 hours until his race with Tommy. So I showed you instead of telling you. I would like you to do the same thing with the ant and the grasshopper. Okay? And I would like you to pick the first time they meet. All right, it's the day, it's their first meeting. You can do the conversation from their different perspectives, but it's the day of their meeting. So here's an example of what you would do. Hang on, Kyle. See if I answer your question. Here's an example of what I would do. I would pick ant. And I would make a who, what, when, where, why chart. Who is it? Well, it's an ant. Yes, Simeon?
Do you have to do both?
Yes, I would like you to do two pairs, just like I did. Just like I did. Okay, Kyle. I can't,
So
I'm too
is
serious.
it are we writing before it happened, or the day when that, like, is it the day that he came for food, or is it the day?
Well, you know what? Perhaps some people like to be told what to do, what to pick, and some people like to pick for themselves. You like to be told?
I will take by myself.
I like to be told too. Okay, so I'm telling you, it is just before the grasshopper encounters the ant for the first time and the grasshopper is partying. The ant is over here and the grasshopper is over there, and the ant's doing his ant thing and the grasshopper's doing his grasshopper thing, and they can see each other, but they haven't spoken to each other yet, but they're about to. Is that enough telling? Is that specific enough?
Yes.
Okay, so here's what I would do. There's an ant. What is he doing? What is the ant doing? What are ants always doing?
He's gathering food for the winter.
Okay, they're gathering food, but let's be specific. What kind of food? What kind of food does this ant like?
Crumbs.
What?
Breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs.
Come on,
Oh,
that's
that brings us to, okay, he's gathering breadcrumbs.
What kind of breadcrumbs? Come
Oh.
on.
Good bread.
Yeah, how about
Rye bread.
rye bread? Yes.
Garlic
Ew, garlic bread.
Oh,
What?
yum. Okay, back to this. So, let's skip down to where. If he's gathering breadcrumbs, where must he be? Where would you find breadcrumbs?
Olive Garden.
At a restaurant? Oh, okay.
Olive Garden.
Oh, by the way, okay, you guys, this is an example. You don't have to use this, okay? We're not choosing for you. I'm giving you an example of what you would do. You make up your own stuff. You can be gathering anything you want, all right? But if he's gathering rye breadcrumbs, he's either people have had a massive picnic or he's outside of a bakery. I like, well, this is a more urban setting. He's in a small grassy strip next to the Jones Bakery. When? Okay, our when is a little bit restricted. It can't be winter time yet. It could be spring, it could be summer, it could be fall. What do you like?
Fall.
Spring.
Spring.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter because you're going to pick your own anyway. We'll go with fall. It's fall. It's a sunny fall day. It's a sunny fall day because the grasshopper is being lulled into a sense of security that it will last forever. Okay. So why is the ant doing this?
To save it for winter.
Okay, he's preparing for winter. That's a little boring. Yeah, bland. Because his wife and 200 children okay, wife and 200 children are
Sleeping. What is it?
you know, it'd be nice if they'd come out and help gather
Are
breadcrumbs with
hungry.
it.
How about that?
Are always hungry.
Are starved.
Maybe they're working on the mound, and that's why.
Oh, that's good. That's
Maybe
good.
they're decorating for Christmas.
I feel like some people do start decorating for Christmas.
Like all the stores do. In the summer.
Okay, so then I would like you to take your brainstorming and just weave it into a story, just like I did with Tommy Tortoise. And then do the same thing with the grasshopper. Let your imagination run and be as specific as you can. Like I said, gathering food, gathering breadcrumbs, better. Gathering rye breadcrumbs with the little sesame seeds.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, and the oat. You know, that chunky bread, it's really expensive, you know, it's supposed to be really healthy. Be as specific as you can, and it makes your stories really come alive and pop. And so if you found all our essays tiresome, just take a sigh of relief. I can let my imagination go for a while. And if you don't, we are going to do essays again. So somebody's going to be unhappy.
So we're basically just filling in the little story gaps
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yes, and then write just a paragraph. Not, like I said, like one of those 3 paragraphs, just a brief paragraph for each one. So you will do 2 paragraphs. You will tell the story from the perspective of the ant doing his thing, and then you will move over and you will do the same thing for the grasshopper. What's he doing? Why is he doing it?
So are we supposed to include, so we're not supposed to include any of like the plot or the climax or resolution?
No, you don't have to retell the story of the ant and the grasshopper.
Alright, so
Because if we're just focusing with it, just like,
doing
hey,
their
Simeon,
life.
just like when I did the tortoise and the hare, I didn't tell about the race or anything. I just picked one moment. That morning they woke up and they were going. And so we're going to pick one moment. The moment that the ant's over here scuttling around with his breadcrumbs or whatever. Yesterday it was apple peelings.
Apple
My
peelings.
students picked apple peelings. And the grasshopper's over here doing
Who knows what?
who knows what, but nothing good.
Who knows what?
Nothing useful. Yes.
So, conversation. Should we put it in proper conversation, or what should we do with the conversation if we have them talking?
You know what? Do you guys know what we normally do with conversation?
Make people talk.
Okay, that was not a well-asked question. Let me rephrase that. Do you know how we punctuate, how it's considered proper to punctuate and lay out a conversation?
Yeah.
Tell me. You said you know,
put it
tell
on
me.
a different line, then you quote it.
Okay. Generally, you start a new paragraph. All right, you know, every time, you know, picture a book, think of a book you've read with a conversation.
Socrates.
Okay, yes. Well, that's different because it's actually written like a dialogue.
That is a
So that said, you don't have to do that for me if you don't want to. It's okay to just make it all in one paragraph. If you really feel like a purist and you really want to fill up the whole page and you want to just, you know, have a conversation, that's fine. However, something just occurred to me. I said earlier, the ant was over here and the grasshopper was over there and they hadn't encountered each other yet. Therefore, there wouldn't be a conversation yet.
But they're about to
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, but about to isn't the
Unless
same as
they're
doing.
talking to themselves.
Unless they're talking to themselves.
Okay, if you want them to talk to themselves or think to themselves, that's fine, put it in quotes. And this, you might say, oh, Mrs. Ferguson is treating us like we're little, but I'm going to treat you for a moment like you're little, except I can't find my marker again. Remember that when we do, I love rye bread. And then we put a comma, quotations, said Annie Ant, the youngest of the vast ant family. What should their last name be? Their last name should start with an A too. What? What is it?
Anderson.
Antington! Oh, love it.
Antington.
The vast Antington family. Of the vast Antington Empire.
Antington Empire?
Okay.
What?
The important thing here, see, we have written too many essays, obviously, and we're just overflowing. The important thing is, remember, we use quotation marks and then a comma, but if you choose to use an exclamation point, or if Annie is not sure if she likes rye bread, and she's asking a question, you don't have to put a comma as well, all right? But if you would normally put a period here, we put a comma there instead. I have a lot of students that forget that. Probably because we don't write a lot of conversations, maybe. We tend to write nonfiction and we tend to write papers and we don't write conversation. All right, so we're done early, but let me recap. You are going to read chapters 1 through 3 of the Dorothy Mills Rome book, right? It's the red one. You are going to read chapters 1 through 20 of Our Young Folks Josephus, which is going to, just to let you know, it's going to take you from Abraham up to like Joshua. That's the section it's going to cover. And next week we'll add some of the short maps in our timeline. And you are going to write 2 paragraphs for me. One from the perspective of the ant, and one from the perspective of the grasshopper, showing me, as much as you can, your 5 W's. For example, instead of saying, the ant was gathering rye breadcrumbs at the bakery, you know, I would say, I don't know why I have to say it like that. You might say, as he lugged an enormous chunk of rye bread with a little sesame seed on top across the parking lot of the Jones Bakery
Oh no. the
to
Jones
his
Bakery.
anthill on the grassy strip by the parking lot. He thought to himself, oh, and then you can have a conversation with himself, Annie is going to love this. Right?
He's right.
But you see how instead of saying, he did this, this is why, see if you can weave it in a little bit, all right? And make it a little more interesting, all right? And I guess, you got 5 minutes, but if you want to go, have some extra time. Hit the water, I was going to say hit the water fountain. There's no hitting water fountains now, I forgot. All right, see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.